So 2018, the Royal Opera House had a new version of the opera Carmen. And at the moment when Carmen, the title character, first appears, usually in a gorgeous flamenco dress of some kind, she appears in a gorilla outfit, takes off the head and starts singing, which we thought that was a great version, actually. I really enjoyed it, but it didn't necessarily please everybody. The reason I showed that to you is just one example of how potent the ape symbol is in all sorts of different forms of culture, because I thought it would be good as part of Giant Ape-ril to just do a little bit of thinking about what this Kong myth is all about, purely from an amateur perspective. I'm not Jane Goodall or a cultural theorist of ape things. But yeah, so here's my idea I'm presenting to you, is that apes run wild throughout cultural history, all the way back to like Aesop's fables, medieval bestiaries, all the way to the latest Kong film at the cinema, for example. So one thing is, when genres begin, often there's an ape hanging around at the beginning, in at the start. There's an ape. So the beginning of the detective story, Murders in the Rue Morgue, ape, orangutan, in fact. Beginning of the occult detective genre in Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu's Green Tea, monkey. And what else? Sword and Sorcery. The very first Conan story, The Phoenix on the Sword, has an ape-like, described as being like a baboon-type creature. So, just want to launch a genre? Send for an ape. Various 20th century apely expressions. So, Edgar Rice Burroughs is always having apes in his stories, notably, but not only, in the Tarzan stories, where there are man-like apes in Africa, and you actually get a human being who possibly is also an ape as well. James Joyce talks of the hyper ape in his dreamlike Finnegan's Wake book, and hyper ape sounds like a giant ape to me, though apparently might have been something to do with Charlie the Chimp, a popular exhibit in Dublin Zoo. In the fabulous B-movie Captive Wild Woman, Aquanetta is turned from an ape into a human being. Paula the Gorilla Girl, one of the lesser-known Universal monsters. And that inspired an opera as well, as it happens. So apes, stalking through our dreams, and then standing above them all hugely is King Kong. And I think that first King Kong movie, original 1933 version, has its own sort of dreamlike mythical feel. And I'm thinking particularly of the beginning, when you're not seeing any giant apes or dinosaurs. It's in New York. But the way the city looks, this kind of luminous city. Carl Denham is searching. He's got this last remaining few hours to find a woman to take on this adventure. And there's Andaro, Fay Wray's character Andaro, stealing an apple. So it's got a sort of a biblical kind of Adam and Eve resonance to it. And, her trying to steal that apple starts the whole saga all the way to the latest King Kong blockbuster. So what are these sort of mythical things? If King Kong is a myth, what sort of myth is it? I think partly it's about desire, not in the sense that anybody thinks, yeah, I really wish I was a 50-foot high ape. That would solve all my problems. But just the kind of unbridled power and destructive power and kind of, I suppose, willpower of the giant hairy monster it's a very basic level. I suppose that's part of it. Beauty and the Beast is obviously coded into, particularly the first movie. There's that famous last line, always slightly different in different adaptations, but something to do with it was Beauty killed the Beast. So, okay, so it's a callback to the Beauty and the Beast story. Written in 1740 by the fabulously named Gabrielle Suzanne Barbeau de Villeneuve. Great story, which I'd recommend. But Beauty doesn't kill the Beast exactly. The Beast, once she loves him, the Beast turns into a prince. So I suppose in a way, the beast identity is shed. So you could say the Beast has been killed in that sense. But it does seem a little bit different. And yet, saying Beauty killed the Beast, it sort of seems to work. Having said that, last time I saw King Kong, it's 90 years later, he's still having films made about him, and he actually ends up with his own empire of other Kong-like creatures. So you could say he kind of did become a prince after all. Who can say? Empire, I've written down as well. Empire, well, he climbs the Empire State Building as this sort of symbol of the highest thing around at the time, in the most advanced city. The latest film's got the word empire in the title as well. And then there's all that colonial stuff, it's exploring, white men going to find a jungle creature, the sort of exploitation angle of bringing him back as this sort of underdog who's exploited and abused. Lost races, they're always been part of the story. So there's that kind of empire stuff as well. And then having climbed to the top of the Empire State Building, we get the fall. And the fall has a very mythical sense to it too. In Philip Jose Farmer's story, after King Kong fell, there's a passage about the idea of the fall, where the protagonist of the story, since he had been 13, he had been trying to equate the great falls in man's myths and legends and to find some sort of intelligence in them. The fall of the Tower of Babel, of Lucifer, of Vulcan, of Icarus, and finally of King Kong. But he wasn't equal to the task. He didn't have the genius to perceive what the falls meant. He couldn't screen out to use an electronic term, the noise. All he could come up with were folk adages. What goes up must come down. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. So, just some thoughts there. Mythical dimensions of the whole King Kong thing. This has been part of the Giant Ape-ril reading event, which is a month of reading about giant monsters such as King Kong. And that is co-hosted by Annie from Obscure Book Adventures and Duncan from Back Away from the Donkey. Other participants as well. There's a playlist down below, links to the co-host channels, all the groovy stuff. Okay, back soon with something else.